My next guest is more than qualified to discuss the situation there, the White House reaction, and perhaps his own plans to occupy the White House in 2016. Joining me on set is Senator Rick Santorum. Rick, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Raymond.
Later, the entire Santorum clan will join us to discuss this new book, and it's a beauty, Bella's Gift, so stay tuned for that. I want to start with President Obama. From this conference, here's what he had to say about Islam and trying to tie Islam to the terrorism we're seeing across the world. Roll that.
We are not at war with Islam. We are at war with people who have perverted Islam. We've got to discredit these ideologies. We have to tackle them head on. And we can't shy away from these issues. And too often, folks are understandably sensitive about addressing issues. But we have to talk about them honestly and clearly.
We have to about them clearly. Is this an ugly lie? Islam being tied to the terrorism we're seeing across the world?
It's not an ugly lie. The fact of the matter is that whether it's ISIS or the Islamic Jihad or the Wahhabis, who are all extremists in their ideology. It's just how violent they are. But their ideology is all the same, and it is a very fundamentalist view of Islam that dates back to the time of the creation of Islam. These people are citing the Quran. They're citing all the holy texts to suggest that this is not part of Islam.
A contributing factor.
That Islam is not a contributing factor here is really not honest, is not discussing what needs to be discussed. And when the president says this has nothing to do with Islam, he gives the Islamic world a pass.
Now,
and we can't do that.
There are counterterrorism experts. I spoke to some of them this week. These guys say, wait a minute. When you link Islam with what we're seeing, it validates, it gives validity to the recruiter's line that to be a true Muslim, this is what you must do, and that it becomes the holy war that everyone doesn't want to confront.
It is, I mean, the holy war right now. Listen to what ISIS is saying. Look at what Iran has been saying, and now it's a different strain, a Shiite strain. But they have been in a holy war with the United States. We have not engaged them in that way, and I think that's a mistake. It's a mistake not to identify the enemy. Look, ISIS, in my opinion, is obviously a horrible, ruthless group of people. But they're laying out their game plan as to exactly what they're doing. We can just go back from 1,400 years and see what they're going to do in the future, because they're trying to follow what Muhammad did. That makes it a fairly predictable enemy. Not if you don't identify the enemy. If you deny that that's who they are and that's what they're doing, then you end up making a lot of very bad policy prescriptions.
Rick, I want to ask you about the president's solution, or at least purported solution. He listed a whole list of grievances that these people have, the young people who are being recruited to ISIS. He said poverty is a part of it.
That's giving them excuse. You see, not tying them to the legitimacy that they are drawing from Islam. That's not giving them an excuse to recruit. What's giving them a pass is saying they have a legitimate reason to do this. There is no legitimate reason to go and cut off the heads of 21 people, 21 Christians. And I will tell you, Raymond, I watched that video. I've never watched it before, but I felt, I have to watch this. I have to have that seared in my head. I have to remember that martyrdom. I have to remember that that's the brutality that we're facing in order to be able to aptly have the courage to go out and confront it.
The president says, look, we need to promote dialogue. He's got what he calls a virtual exchange program where Muslims abroad and Americans will be able to dialogue in a global fashion. Will this cure the violence we're seeing across the region?
The people who are a part of ISIS, a part of the Muslim Brotherhood, a part of Al-Qaeda, a part of the Taliban, they hate us because of who we are. They hate us because of who we are, not because of what we do, not because of economic conditions. They hate us because they believe it is their obligation to convert us to the one true faith. That's what their obligation is. It has nothing to do with all of these other things. Is dialogue an important thing? Of course dialogue is important. Will it solve this problem? No, it will not.
The president went through a list of celebrating really the virtues of Islam, saying that it was here at the founding of the country. It was important to it. There are doctors, lawyers today who are here moving our society forward. Is that pandering to one group?
Look, are there Muslims in this country who are contributing to the goodness and greatness of this country? Of course there are. I mean, that's not pandering. I think you have to express that reality. There are a lot of very good, and I have some very good friends who are Muslim, but they don't see these people as not Muslims. They see them as a cancer within Islam, and they want Islam to join with us, to join with Islam to address this cancer. It is a cancer that is real, and it's like any other cancer. If you try to crush this cancer and you leave just a little bit of the cancer behind, what comes back? Something more virulent, something worse. And if you look at it, you had the Muslim Brotherhood, and what came after the Muslim Brotherhood? The Taliban. What was worse? Al-Qaeda. What's worse? ISIS. This is the progression that we're seeing, and unless we crush the head of this thing and obliterate it and join with the Muslim community to do so, who many do want to do this, but they're not been given the authority or the condoning from the president that this is in fact the problem they have to solve.
You bring up Iraq, what happened there, the void that was created in many ways. This week Jeb Bush came out. He had a big foreign policy speech. He listed and released his advisors, his foreign policy advisors. They include folks like Paul Wolfowitz, who was the architect of Iraq, Robert Zoellick, Jim Baker. Yet he says he's his own man. What does this tell you?
This is going back not just to George W. Bush, but George H.W. Bush in some of these advisors. You know, I think it's important that we have a president who doesn't have to rely on advisors. He has some experience in this area, who's actually been talking about and working on these issues. I was in Israel a few months ago, and I was told by some of the most senior people in the government that we need to prepare for a wartime president. We need to elect one in this country. And I can tell you that if it is Hillary Clinton, which it looks likely to be, someone with that kind of vast experience, we better have one who's been down this road, who has a record and feels confident confronting. Because we saw Mitt Romney in the last four questions got away. Why? Because there wasn't the experience there wasn't the knowledge. He hasn't been through it. I was here on 9/11. I worked on a bill to ban to stop Iran from getting a nuclear program. I worked on a Syria bill. I worked 8 years on the Armed Services Committee. I spent years lecturing around this country on the issue of identifying the enemy. We need to identify the enemy. I gave it at the National Press Club in 2006 and presented it to George Bush, President Bush, because he was doing, candidly, what President Obama is doing, which was not being frank with the American public as to the role of Islam in this crisis.
Conflict and crisis. I want to roll this in. This is Jeb Bush. I want you to hear this and react. Roll that.
America does not have the luxury of withdrawing from the world. Our security and our prosperity and our values demand that we remain engaged and involved in often distant places. We have no reason to apologize for our leadership or our interest in serving the cause of global security, global peace, and human freedom. Nothing and no one can replace strong American leadership.
Is Jeb Bush the man to bring about global peace, global security, strong American leadership, in your opinion?
You know, I've sort of made it a vow not to go out and attack folks who are about running for president on the Republican side. Jeb Bush is a good man. I think he has good intentions. I think experience matters. I think having the ability to go toe-to-toe with a Hillary Clinton in a debate when the time gets tough, you need someone who can draw on those resources and not back down when the time gets tough.
And you don't think he has the experience?
Look, he was a governor of a state. That's, you know, there's a lot of, I mean, I get criticism all the time when I ran 4 years ago. Well, you never ran a state government, and therefore you don't know what it's like to be an executive. So, you know, you bring different things to the table. I've been a CEO of a company for a couple of years since that time, but, you know, the arguments for each, one has national security experience, one has governing experience as a state. They all have weaknesses. I think at this election, the experience on the national security front is going to be paramount because that's the area the president has the most impact.
There are reports that there will be an Iraqi-led ground force trying to take Mosul back from ISIS. The United States may or may not be part of that effort. Would you support the U.S. being part of that effort?
Absolutely. Look, there are 3 countries right now who are trying to fight ISIS. And Jordan, who the president wasn't even going to meet with the King of Jordan when he came here, if it wasn't for the fact that the Jordanian pilot was killed in such a barbaric manner, and he gave the Jordanian president, at a time of the crisis of that nature in the country of Jordan, 20 minutes. 20 minutes. And has not really communicated effectively since. Look at the other state that's fighting back, Egypt. Yeah. He won't even recognize that president. He believes that the Muslim Brotherhood should be reinstated in Egypt instead of a president who's fighting the Muslim Brotherhood and fighting ISIS. And third, the Kurds. Why are we not arming the Kurds? I was in a meeting with Senator Lindsey Graham's office the other day and Senator Brasso and some other folks, and we were talking, we need to pass a bill to say to the president, and it will get broad support, that we need to arm these people who love America, who are seeing their, being persecuted and crucified. We need to give them the means to fight back.
U.S. and Turkey just signed a deal to train Syrian rebels to fight against ISIS. Good idea?
No. I don't think we need to be playing games with Iranian satellite countries.
Like Turkey?
Like Syria, for sure. And you have Iran, you have Syria, you have Yemen now, and we have to deal with Iraq because we broke Iraq,
right,
if you will. We own it, and we shouldn't have left there in the first place. But these other countries, particularly Syria, we should not be playing any kind of games with.
And you think the American people are ready and willing to send boys and girls back into the sands of Mesopotamia?
I'm suggesting that we need to send General Jack Keane suggested the other day at a hearing that we need to send about 10,000 troops there to work with the Kurds, work with the Iraqis, maybe even work with the Jordanians. What we need to be doing is reclaiming Iraq. I don't think we should be going into Syria at this point. I think we need to eliminate the threat of ISIS in Iraq. We need to regain that territory. People in the Anbar Awakening stood by the United States, Sunnis, stood with us to eliminate al-Qaeda. And we abandoned them. ISIS came back with virulence, and those are the people in that section of Iraq who are really getting persecuted, and we need to stand with them.
How would you defeat this enemy? The Vatican Secretary of State this week said an international force should go into Libya, intervene now, but it should be under the banner of the UN.
No, we can't be under the banner of the UN. That's a prescription for failure. The United States has to take leadership in making sure that we are coordinating the military activity. That's why we need to work with the Kurds who want to work with us. We need to provide them the eyes, the ears, the intelligence, all of the things that they need, the training to be able to be effective. The same thing with the Iraqis and the same thing with the Jordanians in that area of the country. And then, I think we need to reestablish relationships with Egypt. President Morsi al-Sisi is a friend. President Morsi was legitimately deposed because he was trying to basically take control. Is the old idea of one election, one vote, one election, one time. And al-Sisi came in, straightened things out in Egypt, and we need to have a great relationship with that country that wants to have a good relationship with us.
Before I let you go and bring the family on a little bit, there was a recent CNN poll. Mike Huckabee was at the top of that poll. Now, granted, he's polling at 16%. You are not in the top 5 or 6 in that poll. Cut through, given that perception already, and that was a national poll.
Yeah, I don't really worry too much about polls. 4 years ago, I was not above 1 or 2% at any poll at any point in time, and we ended up coming very close to pulling off quite an upset against the sort of everybody's candidate, the establishment's candidate. I think this time it's going to be much more fragmented. I think you're going to see candidates just like 4 years ago. They're going to rise, and then they're going to find out what the warts are, and they're going to fall back. And maybe some will, some won't. What I know is that when push came to shove at the end, we held our own for quite some time, won 11 states, and came close.
Hold it right there.